Hi everyone. In this episode, we will talk a little bit about ways in which you can finance your medical school or professional school cost of attendance. So first, it's important to think about what all is coming up financially for you as you embark on your application process and also actually matriculating to school. So first and foremost, the application process itself can be quite costly. We do go into these dollar amounts in more detail in another episode that's called Financing Your Medical School Application Process. So we would definitely encourage you to take a listen to that episode as well. Once you matriculate to school, you will need to consider the cost of your tuition, your books, and your fees. Those expenses are generally fixed and you have a set dollar amount that you will be contributing. Also, your cost of living. Now, this is something that medical schools do estimate, but you can also look for ways to potentially save on those cost of living expenses depending on where you are geographically, what the cost of living is like. I think we all know that different markets, different cities have different expenses. Also thinking about things like getting roommates or potentially living off campus as opposed to on campus can be less expensive as well. And then another fact that you will want to consider as you think ahead to your financing is what is the interest that you will be paying on your loans. Obviously, the lower the interest rate, the less money altogether you will need to pay for your next step in professional training. So one thing that's always good to know about in terms of financial aid is that financial aid does not simply refer to need-based aid. A lot of people have this misconception and worry that if they don't qualify for need-based aid, that their family or through private loans, they need to come up with the full cost of attendance. Financial aid simply refers to any grants, scholarships, loans that you will be requiring in order to pay for your graduate training. So even if you come from a background that is not low income, you definitely want to apply for financial aid so that you can qualify for good rate loans through the federal loan programs. So we'll go over a few of the options here in terms of what you might be considering when you look at financial aid. Grants and scholarships are free money, meaning you don't need to pay this money back. Many schools have both need-based aid and merit-based aid. So you want to be sure that you pay attention to any additional applications for scholarship that may be present at your specific schools of interest. Then you will also be offered federal student loans to help pay for your professional school experience. Subsidized loans mean that these loans do not start earning interest while you are in school. So if you take out, for example, $20,000 at the start of your first year of medical school, when you graduate, that loan balance is still $20,000. Unsubsidized loans will accrue interest while you're in school. So if you take out $20,000 your first year and say you have an interest rate of 6% on that loan, by the time you graduate from medical school, your balance for that loan will be the $20,000 plus the 6% interest. So that's something that's good to stay mindful of. Service-based aid is scholarship aid that can be given to you through the commitment of serving a community in need. So that could be military. So you can apply for health profession scholarships through all of the military branches. They will then pay for your medical school training as well as your cost of living. In exchange, you will have a service commitment to the military over the next typically 5 to 7 years following graduation from medical school. There are also service-oriented programs such as the National Health Service Corps, where again, they will apply or they will pay for your medical training in exchange for you serving in an underserved area of their design after you graduate. So following your medical school, following your residency, you will be assigned to a certain city or state in order to serve the surrounding community as a way to start paying back the loans that they gave you. Other sources of aid that some people have access to and some people don't are any family sources of aid or personal savings. Sometimes family members are generously able to help pay for college. And when it comes to graduate or professional school, there may not be that availability or that opportunity. Sometimes families might be willing to perhaps give you a loan as a non-interest loan, but they expect you to pay them back. So certainly these are opportunities you may want to discuss with your family, just so that you have a strong idea of what you are facing going into paying for medical school or professional school. The other thing that is important to note for any of our students who are not U.S. citizens or permanent residents, while many medical schools will still consider you eligible for any institutional aid or scholarships that they might offer, you do not qualify for federal student loans if you are not a citizen or permanent resident of the United States. So if you find yourself in that situation, it would again be really important to talk to family to see if there might be a way to gain help from them in terms of paying for medical school. You may also want to, again, talk with family to determine if there are any close family friends or relatives who are U.S. citizens or permanent residents who may be willing to co-sign loans for you. That's another good opportunity to explore. When you start thinking about applying for financial aid, first and foremost, this is not anything you would need to do until coming up on December, January of the year in which you are applying. So you don't apply for the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, until you are already underway with your application process and are now typically going through interviews already. So it's not something you would do this upcoming June, for example. In order to apply for FAFSA, you do need all of your tax filings. So that's a good thing to keep record of or to talk with parents about if you're not sure where that is. It is also important to know that if you are under the age of 30, even if your parents are not willing or able to contribute to your medical school financing, their information will still be required by the majority of medical schools. So it's good to kind of warn your parents about this, have them ready to go with their tax filings as well, so that when you complete the free application for federal student aid, you're able to include your parent information. Like I said earlier, it is typically required for anyone who is under the age of 30, usually regardless of marital status as well. So if you are married at the time of application, typically your spouse's information is also included, as well as your parent. There is a lot of information on the AAMC's website concerning financing for medical school that we would really encourage you to take a look at as well. It's really important also to consider your money and managing your money wisely even now, and certainly as you go through graduate and professional school and that training. Sometimes, if you feel like you have zero money and you're putting a lot on credit cards, it can start to feel like it's sort of monopoly money and it just sort of goes off into the ether. And it's, something for your future self to be worried about. It is really important to try to get out of that mindset and to make sure you're living as frugally as possible. Simple things like making your own coffee as opposed to buying a cup of coffee every day can absolutely make a world of difference when you think about compounding interest rates on credit cards. Definitely make a budget, stick to that budget, stay as frugal as you can as you go through not only your current college experience, but also any gap years, or certainly as you're in medical school as well. That's something that's really important to keep in mind. Definitely review your credit reports now just to make sure that there's not any errors or mistakes that may hamper your ability to take out loans once you're in medical school. If you have any student loans now, you'll want to make sure that those are in good standing, and we provide the website for you here to be able to do that, so that you can make sure that you are not already coming into the medical school application process with a challenge or a default status on a current student loan. As you may expect, that makes it very difficult, if not impossible, for medical schools to grant you additional loan resources. Also really important to make sure you're paying all of your bills on time. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to be in touch with us during regular advising appointments or walk-in hours. We will also be doing a longer seminar in person upcoming in February, where we'll go over school selection, the interview process, and financing medical school in more depth. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.